Wedding shocker. Groom discovers bride is his half-sister. It was supposed to be the perfect day. The sun was shining, the guests were smiling, and Luke Carter was about to marry the woman he believed was the love of his life. Until his father, stepped forward at the altar and uttered the words that shattered everything. "You can't marry her. She's your sister." Silence fell like a thunderclap. Sophia's veil trembled. Luke's world spun out of control. The woman he kissed, dreamed of, nearly married, shared his blood. Now they must face the unimaginable. Can a heart unlove someone it once called home? Can two souls entwined by fate and blood ever truly walk away? Or will they find another path, one not built on romance, but on forgiveness? When the truth comes too late, what kind of love can survive it? And what kind of family can rise from the wreckage? Sometimes, the most heartbreaking love stories are the ones that never should have begun. The wind howled across the barren fields of western Kentucky as Ethan Carter stood on the porch of his aging farmhouse, a worn duffel bag slung over his shoulder. His wife, Sarah, watched silently from the doorway, cradling their sleepy-eyed 4-year-old son, Luke. The winter air bit into their skin, but the silence between them was colder. "I have to try," Ethan said softly, gripping her hand. "If this doesn't work, I don't know what else I can do." Sarah nodded, her eyes filled with worry, but no longer capable of protest. Their small TV repair business had gone dry. Nobody fixed old electronics anymore. They just threw them away. The bills stacked up. The pantry was bare. Ethan's plan? Travel all the way to El Paso, Texas, find surplus electronics from across the border, fix them, and sell them back home. Risky. Desperate. But it was all he had left. 3 days later, Ethan stepped off a Greyhound bus into the dust and noise of El Paso. The air buzzed with Spanish and English, smells of street tacos and gasoline. The border shimmered under the heat of the Texan sun. He had never been this far from home. He wandered through the noisy market near the border checkpoint, searching for leads, old televisions, broken radios, anything he could salvage. But everything felt foreign. The language, the people, the pace. He stopped at a money exchange booth where a woman with striking eyes and long, dark hair glanced up from her register. "You look lost," she said with a soft Mexican accent. "I guess I am," Ethan admitted. "I'm looking to buy some old electronics, fix them up, bring them back to Kentucky." The woman smiled. "You're not the first with that idea. I'm Isabel. If you're careful, and if you don't get ripped off, you might find what you need." There was something comforting in her voice, something real. She changed his money and gave him directions. But before he left, she added, "Be careful who you trust out here. Not everyone's as honest as I am." Ethan chuckled, thanked her, and walked away. But as he left, Isabel watched him, just a little too long. That night, after a full day of haggling and hauling dusty old equipment, Ethan discovered that the next bus back to Kentucky wouldn't leave for 2 more days. He had nowhere to stay, no family, no plan, so he returned to Isabel. Her house was small, hidden in a narrow street behind the marketplace. She lived alone. The walls smelled like chili and cinnamon. That night, over a humble dinner of rice and beans, Ethan told her everything, his broken business, his struggling family, his son. And as the desert night grew colder, the fire in Isabel's eyes grew warmer. One thing led to another. A gentle touch, a stolen glance. A fragile man and a lonely woman. And just like that, lines blurred in the shadows of El Paso. They shared one night, a night that would echo across 2 decades. El Paso faded in the rearview mirror of Ethan Carter's memory like a blurry photo long forgotten. He returned to Kentucky with a box of dusty electronics, a half-broken VCR, a few speakers missing cords, and a foolish hope that he could turn junk into gold. But things didn't go as planned. The gear he brought back was too old, too broken, and no one wanted it. He lost nearly all the money he had. Sarah grew more distant. Little Luke became quieter, sensing the storm beneath their roof. Ethan never spoke of Isabel. Not once. Not even when he lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, remembering her touch, her laugh, and the goodbye that felt unfinished. Back in El Paso, Isabel Martinez stood in front of her bathroom mirror, a pregnancy test clutched in her trembling hand. 2 pink lines. Her heart pounded like it was trying to escape her chest. There was no mistake. She was pregnant. She sat down on the edge of her small bed, one hand over her stomach, the other wiping tears she didn't want to shed. Ethan hadn't left a number, no return address, just a promise to come back. Empty, like the space beside her in the dark. For days, she debated whether to write to the address he had scribbled on a napkin. Ethan Carter, Hartsville, Kentucky. But what was the point? Would he believe her? Would he leave his family? Did she even want him to? In the end, she stayed silent. 9 months later, a baby girl named Sophia Martinez was born in a small clinic on the outskirts of El Paso. She had Ethan's steel blue eyes, his nose, even the dimple in her cheek, but she never knew his name. Isabel raised her alone, working 2 jobs, selling handmade jewelry to tourists and doing bookkeeping for a corner store. Sophia grew up strong, sharp, curious, and beautiful, so much so that Isabel sometimes ached when she looked at her because she saw Ethan's ghost smiling back. They never spoke of her father, not once. Isabel only said he was a good man, but the world pulled us apart. But children grow, and questions grow louder. One day, when Sophia turned 17, she found a faded envelope tucked between pages of an old cookbook. Inside, the napkin. Ethan Carter, Hartsville, Kentucky. Her hands trembled. She didn't say anything to her mother. Instead, she searched online, social media, forums, until one day she found a photo, a small-town electronics repair shop in Kentucky with an old man standing in front under a wooden sign. Carter's Fix-It, her father, alive, real, and he had a son. His name was Luke Carter, only 4 years older than her, a college student now, studying abroad in Tokyo. The same city where Sophia had been accepted into a summer language exchange program. She stared at the screen for a long time, heart pounding. Was this fate, coincidence, or the start of something dangerous? A week later, Isabel stood at the bus terminal in El Paso, watching her daughter board a coach to the airport. "I'll be fine, Mama." Sophia smiled, her suitcase rolling behind her. "I know," Isabel whispered. "But remember, not everything you find out there will give you answers. Some things give you more questions." Sophia nodded, kissed her mother on the cheek, and disappeared into the crowd. Behind her, Isabel stood still, hands on her heart. A storm rising in her soul. Tokyo was electric, neon lights, bullet trains, and a rhythm that never slowed down. For Sophia Martinez, it was overwhelming and magical all at once. The city buzzed with energy she'd never felt back in El Paso. It made her feel alive, free, and dangerously untethered. It was during her second week at the language exchange program that she met Luke Carter. He was helping organize an event at the university's International Center. Tall, lean, with sun-kissed skin and a southern drawl that hadn't quite faded, Luke had an easy charm that turned heads. But it wasn't just his looks that drew Sophia in. It was something deeper, something hauntingly familiar. They ended up on the same volunteer team, organizing a cultural fair. Conversations turned into jokes. Jokes turned into long walks through Shibuya, ramen at midnight, and late-night texts that started with, "Can't sleep either?" Before long, the two became inseparable. Luke had never felt this way before. Sophia was like no one he'd ever met. She listened, really listened. She asked questions he didn't know he had answers to. She was strong, funny, but with eyes that sometimes carried storms. One night, under the lantern glow of a tiny back alley izakaya, he asked her, "You ever feel like you've been looking for someone your whole life, and then you find them, and it's terrifying?" Sophia blinked, then nodded. "Yeah, I feel that every time I look at you." He leaned in. She didn't stop him. Their first kiss was soft, uncertain, but it lit something in both of them that neither could explain, and neither dared question. Weeks passed. Their bond deepened. Sophia never told Luke what brought her to Tokyo beyond the language program. Luke never spoke much about his family back in Kentucky, only mentioning that his dad, Ethan, ran a repair shop and that his mom, Sarah, had passed when he was a teenager. Sophia felt the walls closing in, because now she knew. After weeks of research, after nights staring at old photos and matching timelines and cross-checking addresses, it was undeniable. Luke Carter was her half-brother. They shared the same father, the same blood, and she had fallen in love with him. One night, she stood alone on the roof of her dorm building, Tokyo sprawling out beneath her. She held her phone, thumb hovering over her mother's number. When she finally called, Isabel picked up almost immediately. "Mama," Sophia whispered, I met him. I met Luke. There was silence on the line. I knew you would, Isabel finally said. Her voice was calm but tight, like a knot pulled too hard. He's everything I ever wanted, Sophia cried. But I can't tell him. I can't lose him. Isabel didn't answer right away. Baby, this is the price of silence, the truth we never told. Now it owns you. A week before the program ended, Luke pulled Sophia aside. Come home with me. She froze. To Kentucky? Yeah, meet my dad. He'll love you. And I want to do this right. I want to be with you. Sophia's heart cracked. I can't. Why not? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Tears welled in her eyes. There's something you don't know, Luke, something that could destroy everything. Then tell me. She shook her head, backed away, ran. Marker. That night, Luke found a photo in her open notebook, a faded napkin with an address in Kentucky, his father's address, Ethan Carter. The handwriting was his dad's. He'd seen it 100 times on work receipts. Everything crashed at once. The next morning, Sophia didn't show up for the closing ceremony. Luke waited outside her dorm for hours. When she finally appeared, suitcase in hand, he walked up to her, pale and shaking. Who are you? Sophia couldn't meet his eyes. I'm your sister. The words dropped like lead between them. Luke stepped back, breath caught in his throat. No, that can't be. Our father is Ethan Carter. My mom met him in El Paso. Just once. But that's all it took. Luke's face twisted in disbelief, rage, heartbreak. We kissed. We talked about a future. I know. This is sick. It wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't know. Not at first, but I couldn't stop it. He turned away. I need to go. And he did. Sophia stood in the airport alone that night, watching his figure disappear into the Tokyo crowd. Summer in Kentucky was heavy with heat and secrets. The fields around Hartsville shimmered under the midday sun. Cicadas buzzed in the trees, and the Carter family farmhouse had never been so alive. There were flowers strung up on the front porch, tables being set in the backyard, and neighbors bringing over homemade pies. After all, Luke Carter was finally getting married to a girl he'd met abroad. Someone special, someone who had changed him. Her name? Sophia. No one knew the storm behind her smile. Sophia stood in the guest room upstairs, dressed in ivory. Her hands trembled as she adjusted her necklace, staring at herself in the mirror. Downstairs, voices laughed, country music drifted from the speakers, and the smell of barbecue filled the air. Only she and Ethan Carter, Luke's father, and her father knew what was coming. 2 days earlier, she had written Ethan a letter that began with, "You don't know me, but I know you. You're my father." He hadn't believed it, not at first. But when he saw the old napkin, the handwriting he recognized, the photo of Isabel from decades ago, pregnant and alone, he'd nearly dropped the glass in his hand. And when Sophia walked into his repair shop the next morning, her eyes brimming with tears, he didn't need a DNA test. He knew. He asked her one thing, "Does Luke know?" She shook her head. I just couldn't. Ethan sat down hard, ran a hand through his graying hair, looked at the wedding invitation on the counter and felt like his heart was breaking in two. "Then I'll tell him," he said, voice trembling. "This can't happen, no matter how much it hurts." Now, the day had come. People gathered in white lawn chairs under a giant oak tree. Luke stood at the front, tucks pressed, smile wide, waiting for the love of his life. Sophia walked down the aisle, arm in arm with Ethan. Her heart pounded like a war drum. The world blurred around her. As they reached the altar, Ethan stopped. His hand dropped from Sophia's, and he turned to face the crowd. His voice cracked through the silence. "I'm sorry, but this wedding can't happen." Gasps rippled like waves. Luke's smile faded. "Dad, what are you doing?" Ethan looked at him, eyes glassy. "Son, I need you to listen carefully." He took a breath that sounded like the end of the world. "Sophia is your sister." Silence. A silence so thick it pressed down on every chest. Luke stared at him, unblinking. What did you just say?" Ethan's voice broke. 20 years ago, I made a mistake. In El Paso. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. But Sophia, she's my daughter." Luke turned to Sophia. Her face was pale, tears already streaking down her cheeks. "Why? Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. "You let me fall in love with you." I didn't know at first, she managed. But when I found out, I couldn't breathe. I didn't want to lose you. Luke stumbled back a step, like he'd been punched in the gut. The guests were frozen. Some stood, others whispered. Sophia reached for him, but he recoiled. No, don't. Please don't. And then he walked away. No more vows, no first dance, no cake cutting, just silence, broken hearts, and the slow unraveling of a day that was meant to be beautiful. Ethan stood alone by the tree after everyone had gone, hands shaking. He had just destroyed his son's happiness, but he had also saved them from something far worse. Sarah, Luke's mother, was long gone, but if she had been there, maybe she would have forgiven him. Maybe not. Upstairs, Sophia packed her dress into a suitcase. Her hands were numb. Downstairs, Ethan knocked softly on her door. I'm sorry, kid, he said, not entering. I never should have left your mother. Never should have run from my past. It's not your fault, she whispered. No, it is. He paused. But now that I know you exist, I won't leave again. I'm your father, and that means something to me. She cried quietly after he left. Not because she hated him, but because somewhere in the pain she felt a sliver of belonging, and that was almost worse. But 3 months passed. Autumn rolled into Kentucky like a slow breath. Orange leaves clinging to trees, fog curling along the fences, the world turning quiet again. But the Carter house had not returned to normal. Luke hadn't spoken to Ethan since the wedding. He'd packed a bag that night and drove to Tennessee, staying with a friend from college. The silence between father and son stretched long and bitter. Sophia returned to El Paso. Her mother, Isabel, held her tightly at the bus stop, saying nothing at first. Then finally, "Did you find what you were looking for?" Sophia shook her head. "No, but I found who I am, and maybe that's enough, for now." She tried to forget Luke, but she couldn't. Not entirely, because love like that doesn't disappear, it just goes quiet. Ethan wrote letters, one to Sophia every week, one to Luke every month. Some were never sent, some came back unopened. But he kept writing, because guilt was a river, and writing was the only way he knew how to build a bridge. He told Sophia about the frost on the fence posts, about the old dog who still waited at the back porch for her to return, about the shop he was fixing up. "Maybe you can help me run it someday," he wrote. And slowly, Sophia began to write back. Short notes at first, then longer, then phone calls. By Thanksgiving, she stood once again at the Carter family gate, suitcase in hand. Ethan met her with teary eyes and open arms. "Welcome home," he said, voice rough. She didn't call him Dad. Not yet, but she hugged him tighter than she'd ever hugged anyone before. Luke returned just before Christmas. He hadn't planned to. But something about the snow falling over the old farmhouse, something about seeing Sophia's handwriting on a letter sitting on his dad's desk, something inside him cracked. He walked through the front door like a man returning from war. Ethan stood, unsure whether to smile or apologize. Luke broke the silence. "You still fix radios?" Ethan nodded, heart leaping. "Yeah, mine's broken." That night, the three of them, Ethan, Luke, Sophia, sat at the kitchen table, passing around mugs of cocoa and old stories. No one said, "I forgive you," but forgiveness lived in the spaces between words, in shared laughter, in the quiet understanding of wounds finally aired. They didn't call themselves a family. Not yet. Not yet. But the Carter house felt full again. Not perfect, not healed, but real. On New Year's Eve, Sophia and Luke stood out on the porch, watching fireworks bloom over the hills. She turned to him. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't found out?" Luke nodded. "All the time." "Do you regret it?" He looked at her for a long moment. "No," he said. "It hurt. God, it hurt. But I'd rather know the truth and live with it than live a lie and never know who you are to me." She smiled softly, eyes glistening. "Who am I to you?" He didn't hesitate. "You're my sister." Then quieter, "And you always will be the first person I ever really loved." Sophia rested her head on his shoulder. The stars overhead shimmered, and beneath them 2 hearts, forever changed, found peace. Not in the love they lost, but in the love they still had.